So we're going to return this morning to our study, and we're moving into the book of Revelation. Last week we read the first 11 verses. Today I would like for us to read the rest of chapter 1 as we prepare for our study. Hopefully you brought your homework. Okay, good. I see a number of you with your homework here, and we want to work through this as we pick up the study from where we were. Let's read, first of all, the rest of Revelation 1. If you'll join me in reading the yellow print. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like the sound of a trumpet, saying, Write in a book what you see, and send it to the 7 churches, to Ephesus, and to Smyrna, and to Pergamum, and to Thyatira, and to Sardis, and to Philadelphia, and to Laodicea. Then I turned to see the voice that was speaking with me, and having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And in the middle of the lampstands, I saw one like a son of man, clothed in a robe reaching to the feet, and girded across his chest with a golden sash. And his head and his hair were white like wool, like white wool, like snow. And his eyes were like a flame of fire. His feet were like burnished bronze when it has been made to glow in a furnace. And his voice was like the sound of many waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp 2-edged sword, and his face was like the sun, shining in its strength. When I saw him, I fell at his feet like a dead man, and he placed his right hand on me, saying, Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last, and the living one. And I was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I have the keys of death and of Hades. Therefore, write the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which will take place after these things. As for the mystery of the 7 stars, which you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. So we have been building on the book of Daniel, and in Daniel chapter 9, Daniel receives this revelation about the 70 weeks of Israel. And we saw that Jesus then is standing as he delivers his prophetic message right at the end of the 69 weeks, or 62 and 7. It's right between Palm Sunday, which is the end of the 69 weeks, and the cross. And so the Old Testament says Messiah will be cut off. That's the cross. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city. And so the city is destroyed. We know that Jesus is cut off about 33 AD, and the city is destroyed about 70 AD. So we know there's time in here between the 69th week and the 70th week of Daniel. And so what we were looking for then was this schematic which Gabriel provides for Daniel. In 9:27, he divides the 70th week, a 7-year period, into 2 halves, with this event in the middle called the Abomination of Desolation. All right, that's we looked at 2 or 3 weeks ago as we worked on this. And then we looked at Jesus' prophetic message in Matthew chapter 24. And we saw that Jesus uses the exact same schematic. So it's enlarged from Daniel, which was a very brief presentation, to Jesus' presentation, which expands what's going to happen here. And then he says, when you see the abomination of desolation, run for it. And then he talks about what's going to happen over here. So he uses the same schematic. That's critical for us to understand. And it's helpful for us then, and so I'm tipping my hand in terms of where we're going with the book of Revelation, because it provides for us a basic format or a schema for understanding things and what Jesus said in the end times. And we looked at these verses that talk about the fact that we ought to read the book of Revelation. Normally we would use this sort of chart, but instead last week what we did was to summarize the chapters. And so we laid these out, and we ended our session last time with these chapters summarized to help us get a handle on the book without getting lost in the forest. You know the expression, you can't see the forest for the trees. You get so deep in the trees sometimes you can't get a handle on the forest. So you were to work on this, and here's a couple of people were not here last week. Okay. So your assignment for this week in thinking about all of this was to put the obvious chapters together, right? As you look at this outline, our thinking is this summarizes the book. We're not trying to get all the details. We're not trying to interpret everything yet. We're just trying to summarize what's in each chapter, the major events, major highlights of each chapter. So that's what we have on the page here. And as we work at trying to figure out the structure of the book, you want to look at which chapters obviously go together. So I'm going to trade this. I'm going to reverse the colors here because it makes it easier for us to work with and to see when we work with this. So it's the same thing except black on white rather than the other way around. Now, which chapters in your thinking obviously go together? Yes.
1 and 4.
1 and 4?
Yeah.
You can't skip. All right. You have to follow the pattern and the way the material was presented. So you can't jump around. Let's start with like 2s and 3s. All right.
1 through 3.
1 through 3?
That's what I had.
Okay.
Well, one's like the introduction, and then you have 2 and 3 of the letters to the churches.
Yeah. Let's see here if I can do this. Oops. Okay. Let's put 2 and 3 together to start. All right. 2 and 3 obviously go together. Why?
They're the churches.
Because they're letters to the churches. So one chapter is 4 letters to 4 churches. The next chapter is 3 letters to 3 churches, and they go together. It's Jesus directing John to send his message to these churches. All right. So it's better to work in small chunks than to do it in large chunks. What else obviously goes together?
8 and 9.
8 and 9. Why? Okay, because you have the trumpets here, right? So these are the trumpet judgments. So I would put 8 and 9 together. I don't know where it's all going necessarily yet. I mean, I do because I've already worked on it, but if you're working this, you don't know where it's all going, but at least you have 4 trumpets and 2 trumpets and these judgments that are unfolded for us. All right? What else obviously goes together?
14 through 16.
14 to 16? Okay.
15 and 16.
Yeah, I would put 15 and 16 together first because the 15 and 16 clearly talk about the bowl judgments, right? So you have introduction to the angels who were given 7 bowl judgments, and then in 16, the 7 bowl judgments are poured out on the earth, and you have these things that are taking place in judgment that occurs.
What about the fact that it's the last judgment?
This is the last judgment?
I
Yeah.
mean, I debated that.
Okay.
Whether to put 14 in with it or not. but-
Okay, all right. So what I would do is I would just hold on that for a moment. Let's work with what we have here. What else? 17 and 18, why?
It talks about the harlot, Babylon.
Okay, good, because they both talk about the harlot Babylon. And so I would put these 2 together. Likewise, what you have is an introduction to the judgment of the great harlot, and then you have the whole world watching as the harlot is judged. So both chapters are about Babylon. There's a lot of debate about what does Babylon stand for. How exactly do you interpret Babylon? I'm not interested in that at the moment. I'm only interested in the fact that these two chapters both talk about Babylon. And so I put them together. What else?
6 and 7,
6 and 7? Okay, why?
about the seals.
Okay, all right. So 6 and 7, not quite as clear in terms of putting them together as some of the others, but it seems to me that that's a possibility. And so we can put them together. Now, you can always erase, right? You can always change your mind. But we'll do this, okay? What else?
21 and 22.
21 and 22. Okay, why?
New heaven, new earth.
New heaven and new
All right,
earth.
they both talk about the New Jerusalem, the new heaven, and the new earth. All right? So it seems likely that 21 and 22 go together.
19 and 20.
19 and 20? Okay. Obviously, you have 19 and 20 between 17 and 18 and 21 and 22. So the desire would be to go there. Again, it's not quite as clear initially, perhaps, but it seems to me probably that's where we're going to go. What else?
11 through 13.
11 to 13. Why?
They're all about 3.5 years.
Yeah, all three of them highlight things that are going to happen for 3.5 years. Where did the 3.5 years come from?
Daniel.
From the book of Daniel and from Jesus, right? And so we have this statement about 3.5 years in these chapters. So 11 to 13 is going to be about 3.5 years. There are 5 signs, all right? The temple is trampled underfoot for 3.5 years. 2 witnesses testify for 3.5 years. Then we have an introduction of the 7th trumpet. We have 2 times stated in this chapter that the dragon, Satan, is going to persecute the woman in the wilderness for 7.5 years. And then we have the Antichrist and the false prophet who are going to rule for 3.5 years. Now, you have to ask yourself a question at that point, which is,
What do I do with the rest?
well, okay, what do you do with the rest? Yes. All right. We're not going there yet, but we will.
Which
All right.
2 of the 3.5 years go together?
You have to say, which 3.5 years, right?
Okay.
What are your options?
Two options.
Yes,
First or
the
second.
second.
All right, actually, you have 3 options.
Okay. Oh.
It could be the first 3.5 years. It could be the last 3.5 years. Or it could be something out of the middle that's carved out in 3.5 years. Now, rate them in terms of probability, the 3 options.
The whole time is 7 years.
The whole time is 7 years.
So half of that's 3.5.
So half of 3.5. Good. Is it the first 3.5, second 3.5, or something out of the middle? What are the probabilities?
Well, number 11 would be, I'd say the first, because we already know what happened.
Okay.
So that's not.
So are we talking about 2 different 3.5 year periods? I think probably not. But you have to make that decision when you're working with the text, right? You have to ask the question, is it the first 3.5 years? Is it the something out of the middle which is not defined either in Daniel or in Jesus' presentation? Or is it the second 3.5 years? Now, logic would say to me, it's the second 3.5 years. Why?
Isn't the first supposed to be peaceful time?
First is supposed to be more peaceful, good.
Christ is out of it the last 3.5 years.
And because the Antichrist is manifested at the 3.5 year period. So this has to be, it seems to me, the second 3.5.
And the temple wasn't desecrated until the second half.
Good. And the temple is trampled underfoot. Jerusalem and the temple are trampled underfoot. So it seems like that has to be the second 3.5. Now, could it be that the temple and the Jerusalem are trampled underfoot in the second 3.5, and the witnesses testify in the first 3.5? Could be. But what would you need if that's the case? You would need some kind of clarification. you would need something like the temple in Jerusalem are trampled underfoot for 3.5 years, but the 2 witnesses prophesied during the first 3.5 years, or something like that to help you. You don't have that in the text. Now, you can go back and check it if you want, but take my word for it, you don't have it. So what you have are the 5 signs, 5 time markers, in my judgment, all for the second 3.5 years. So if that's true, where are these 3 chapters as they announce a 3.5 year issue of some kind? Where are you?
In the beginning.
And that's halfway through the tribulation.
week.
You got to be right in the middle, right?
Right.
If you have things that are going to happen for 3.5 years, you either have to be at the beginning or you have to be at the middle. Or you could introduce something brand new and say, we're just going to pick a time out of the middle somewhere. But you need some kind of biblical teaching or indication to do that.
So did it take 3.5 years for that 7th trumpet to be sounded?
Well, the 7th trumpet is sounded as part of this.
So that took 3.5 years. I mean,
Well, the 7th trumpet,
Within that.
the 7th trumpet announces the time of the end. All right, it says it's the final judgment, and then out of the 7th trumpet come the 7 bowls.
so what I'm asking is.
Yeah,
it took-
but the 7th trumpet is not actually tied to the 3.5 years.
Okay.
When you read the chapter, what you have is the temple and Jerusalem trampled underfoot by the Gentiles for 3.5 years. Seems to me that has to be the second 3.5 years. It could hardly be the first 3.5 years. And then you have the 2 witnesses testifying for 3.5 years. When you get down here to chapter 14, the 144,000 that were introduced to us up here near the beginning of the first 3.5 years are now in heaven. And so the 2 witnesses, it seems to me, maintain the witness of God through the second 3.5 years. So what you have is an ability at least to put some sections together. Some of it might be debatable. Some of it you might not feel totally comfortable with initially. But Jesus is unfolding his, what's it called? What's this book called? All right, Revelation. It's not called the puzzle of Jesus Christ, which the Father gave to him to share with his bondservants. It's called the revelation. So Jesus is revealing truth. So it's designed to communicate with us, not to obfuscate, not to make it more difficult. It's designed to make it clear for us.
So back to these trumpets, for me, it took years between each trumpet.
No, I don't think so. Not up here.
Okay.
It seems like what we have, to me, is the introduction of the tribulation starting at chapter 6.
Okay.
Okay? When Jesus breaks the first seals, what we have is the start of this time on this tribulation on the earth. When you get to chapter 11, 12, and 13, you're at the middle point. So the seal judgments take some time. You have, when you read the seal judgments, 25% of the earth's population is destroyed in those first 4 judgments. They're called by many the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the red horse, the black horse, the pale horse, and so forth. And during that time, 25% of the earth's population is destroyed. Then, when you get to the trumpet judgments in 8 and 9, you have, during that period of time, however long it takes, we don't know exactly how long it takes, but however long it takes, another 25% of the earth's population is destroyed. So there's some time involved in them, yes. My best guess is Jesus doesn't give us an actual time. He doesn't say now 1 year in or 2 years in or whatever. My best guess is that this occupies a year and a half or so, that the seal judgments occupy a year and a half or so. You have a 3.5 year period, okay? So, when we put this together then, let me jump ahead now. The main sections of the book, I would put 1 through 3 together. You have a decision with chapter 1, right? You either have to leave it alone or put it with 2 and 3. 2 and 3 are a unit, and chapter 1 introduces the letters to the 7 churches. Twice we're told about the 7 churches. So it seems logical to me that 1 through 3 go together. And now, at that point, Jesus is talking to John about churches that are existent at that time on the earth. Okay? When we come to 4 and 5, we move into heaven's throne room. And so I would put 4 and 5 together. They both describe John in the throne room of heaven and what he sees. First, he sees God on the throne, and then he sees this scroll or book in the right hand of God, and no one is qualified to open it, and then the Lamb steps up and takes the book. All right? So, 4 and 5 are heaven's throne room. Who are the main players? Do you remember? The main people that John mentions?
The Lamb.
The Lamb,
The elders.
the elders,
Father.
the Father,
The angels.
and the angels, okay? So you have to identify who are the elders. The elders are very prominent here, right? 24 elders and 24 thrones and so on. In my opinion, they represent the church because they're differentiated from the angels, they're differentiated from Old Testament saints, etc. That we have to get into when you work through the book more. But what's clear is that we're looking at heaven's throne room, looking at God on the throne and the Lamb with him. Then we come to 6 and 7, and we have the seal judgments. Then we come to 8 and 9, and we have the trumpet judgments. Then we come to 11 to 13, and we have these 3 chapters where we have 5 3.5-year time things that are taking place. 5 things are happening, or 5 statements about them. 4 things, actually. One is the temple and the city are trodden underfoot. The second one is the 2 witnesses. The third is the persecution of the woman and her offspring by the dragon. And the 4th one is the Antichrist. So you have these statements that are made. Then in 15 and 16, we have the bowl judgments. All right? 15 and 16 15 introduces the bowl judgments. 16, we have them unfolded. And then in 17 and 18, we have the judgment on Babylon. So there's a lot of discussion about what exactly does Babylon represent and so forth. At this point, I'm just interested in identifying that Jesus is talking about Babylon, okay? Then in 19, we have Jesus coming to the earth. We have the wedding in heaven, and Jesus returns with the armies, and he destroys all the earth's armies. And then in 20, we have the millennial kingdom. We have Jesus reigning for 1,000 years. We have the Satan bound for 1,000 years. We have the saints resurrected for the kingdom, and we have the 1,000 years taking place with a rebellion of Satan that takes place at the end. And then in 21 and 22, we have the new heavens and the new earth. So what this does, it lets us come up with units in the book in the way in which Jesus presented them, which then we can work with to try to put them together to say, okay, now how do we organize the book at this point? Realizing that these are sort of major components or major units. We don't want to force it. And we may have to adjust some things, but we want to work with what we are given as we look at the structure of the book. And so, when we do this then, what I have in my thinking is, in 1 through 3, it's the church now. That is now in Jesus' day, in John's day, up through today. And then, we have heaven's throne room in 4 and 5. In my judgment, the church now is in heaven. It's interesting, in 4:1, John says, I saw a door standing open in heaven, and I heard a voice saying, come up here. and the Spirit took me into heaven. I think that's the rapture of the church. Doesn't say rapture. For whatever reason, Jesus doesn't nail it down, but clearly John is invited into heaven, to the throne room of heaven. Then, in my judgment, we have the judgments that take place on the earth in 6 through 18. These are all judgments that are taking place. We have the seal judgments, we have the trumpet judgments, we have the bowl judgments, and we have the judgment of Babylon. And then we have the return of Jesus and the setting up of his kingdom in 19 and 20. In 19 is Jesus returning. He's coming with the armies of heaven. There's a sword that goes out of his mouth that destroys the armies of the earth, and we have the kingdom set up. We have Satan bound for 1,000 years, and we have saints resurrected to reign with Jesus for 1,000 years. Clearly, we're talking about a 1,000-year kingdom here. And then, in 21 and 22, we have the new heavens and the new earth. We move off of this earth into a new heavens and a new earth. Then, this becomes, for me, sort of a working outline. And what I see as I look at this is sort of a symmetry to what Jesus has presented. Hopefully it's not something we forced. Hopefully it's something that comes out of an examination of the obvious units, the obvious chapters that go together and so forth as we look at this and attempt to understand. So notice a couple things. One, it's not balanced according to time. All right? It's not like year 1, year 2, year 3, or whatever. That's not how it's presented. It's not balanced according to the size. All right? We have 3 chapters that talk about the church now. We have 2 chapters that focus on the throne room of heaven. And then we have 13 chapters that focus on the tribulation, the judgment of the earth. So it looks like this when you look at the number of chapters and so forth. And again, there's a symmetry to what has been presented. Now, you don't have to go with this, but for me, the obvious symmetry argues in terms of understanding the structure of the book. And if you understand the structure of the book, then it's much easier and simpler to work with the whole thing. And this becomes then the primary focus of the book. The heart of the book is on the judgment that God brings on the earth. That judgment is the 7-year period of time from Daniel 9:27 and from Jesus. And so this is how I see the book breaking into 3 sections. Now we'll come back to this, but I see the church on earth and in heaven in 1 through 5. And then the Great Tribulation in 6 through 18, and then the kingdom of Messiah, and the kingdom is on earth and then in heaven. Just like the church is on earth and in heaven. And so there's symmetry, there's pattern to what Jesus is presenting. So this is what it looks like for me when I put it together in a chart like this. And it helps to be able to picture the structure of the book so when you're studying it, you know where you are. And if you're interested, Friends of Israel was kind enough to put all of this in a chart like this. And I have 3 or 4 of them left. If anybody wants one, you're welcome to have it. Otherwise, you can contact Friends of Israel, and it's $19.95. No, I think it's $4 for the chart if you want one. But I have 3 or 4 here, and you're welcome to take one if you want. Well, it's copyrighted, I think. So yeah. Okay. So you're welcome to have one, and if you want, I'll order some more. I'll get some more from them. But it's the same as what you see here, and it's just laid out with color and suitable for framing and hanging in your living room.
Refrigerated photo.
You can put it on the refrigerator?
Yeah.
Okay. You'll need a couple magnets because they're kind of curled up, right? Okay. So, this is where I was planning to stop with the world history thing, because now you have world history all
In a
wrapped up,
nutshell.
right, in a nutshell,
Yeah.
or a chart. And, but I've had a request maybe to continue in the book of Revelation. Would you like to do that? How many vote yes? How many vote no? Okay, I guess we'll continue with the book of
Can I share
Revelation.
this? I found this book, it's another David Jeremiah book where Christ appears. It goes through Revelation, section by section, in these little mini, like, gives maybe 3 or 4 verses at a time. It is excellent.
Okay.
It is an excellent
I
book.
think it's heretical, but it's okay. No. David Jeremiah is very good. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right. Father, thank you that Jesus has provided, at your direction, a revelation of what's going to happen in the future. And it is a revelation. It's designed to reveal truth. It's designed to communicate for us what's going to happen. Help us as we work through it. Help us as we seek to understand and to receive then the blessings which you have promised to those who read and who heed and who understand the message of the book. It's in Jesus' name that we pray these things. Amen. Okay.